guys, welcome to welcome back to my channel. Today, yet again, we're going through some other helpful tips that are of use to students planning to move to Germany, and in particularly, we're going to look at 8 tips for those that you need to know if you're planning to make the move to Germany soon. So, my first tip, which more than likely is the most obvious one, is to take some money with you in the local currency. So, for example, for me, I'm from Jamaica. We use Jamaican dollars. If you're from the US, you would use US dollars. But here in Germany or in Europe on a whole, we use euros. So I would say coming here, or if you're planning to make the move to come here, bring some euros with you. Of course, I can't tell you how much is necessary to bring. I would say bring enough to cover any unexpected expenses that may pop up, enough to possibly purchase a train ticket or a bus ticket, as well as enough money to hold you over until you're able to make your way to the bank in a couple of days to activate your blocked account or open a bank account on a whole if you don't have one. So that's my first tip. My second tip is to install some useful apps on your phone before making your trip, and there are tons of them. You could look up online what are some necessary ones, but the main one that I'm going to point out today is the Deutsche Bahn app. Deutsche Bahn is pretty much the company that deals with all the transportation here in Germany. So you're able to book tickets for trains, buses, trams, as well as you're able to see updates and on times. If your train or bus is on time, if it's delayed, you can see the best routes to take to get to somewhere, navigation in terms of a map to show you where you're headed, everything. So that's great to have, because more than likely, if you make your way to, let's say, for example, Berlin, Schönefeld, and you're trying to get to, like for me, Berlin is about 2 hours out from where I am. So after landing in Berlin, I need to get to the Saal Hauptbahnhof, and I'm able to use the Deutsche Bahn app to book that beforehand. So by the time I get to the train station, all I need to do is just by the time I get to the airport, rather, all I need to do is get to the train station and get on the train to take me to my closest Hauptbahnhof, or the Hauptbahnhof in the city where I live or reside. My third tip, which is optional, but I found that this was of use, or it would have been of use to me, is to activate a roaming plan from home. So that way, if you get here, more than likely what tends to happen is, of course, what you use at home won't work here in terms of your cell service. So if you activate a roaming plan from before, or at least have data on your phone, at the very least you'll be connected to data, or you'll have data, so you'll be able to send messages or receive messages should you have someone who is here who's willing to come and help you or meet you, whatever the case may be. Should you need to actually use the Deutsche Bahn app, or should you need to, I don't know, navigate using Google Maps, whatever the case may be, this is also going to be super helpful or come in handy for sure. I would say go ahead and do this. My fourth tip, which is also another one that I'm sure everyone is going to think is obvious, is to dress appropriately for the weather. So like for me, I come from a tropical climate. It's very warm. Let's scratch that. It's hot. As Jamaicans would say, it's hot. We'll remove the H to emphasize. So it's very, very hot, and more than likely, most students tend to begin their semester in the winter semester, or begin their school year rather in the winter semester, which begins in October. And October is relatively cold. I say relatively because I know to persons who are used to European weather, 7 or 8 degrees is normal. For me, coming from a tropical island, it was freezing. So I would say bring a scarf, bring at least a moderately thick coat. It doesn't have to be like a snow coat now, but you know, a decent coat. Gloves would not hurt, and definitely socks and shoes that are enclosed, because you don't want your toes outside. If you are one of those persons who are okay with the cold, I would say just bring this in your knapsack or in your suitcase as an option. So don't just not bring it as an option. If you don't actually want to wear it on your person, that's cool, but just make sure you have something to keep you warm. When I came, it was super rainy and super, super cold. I could barely think straight, and I had on a coat, but no scarf, no anything else. So don't make that mistake. Do not be like me. My fifth tip is one that I wish I thought about, is to bring along with you some passport-sized photos. And this might sound a bit ridiculous, but I find that when I came here, I needed a ton of, or let me not say a ton, I would say at least 5, if you can, passport pictures, because when I was registering my residence, I needed one. When I was registering for school, I needed a passport picture. I found that different things kept coming up where I constantly needed a passport photo of myself. Of course, please look online and see the difference between regular or US standard passport pictures as against German standards for passport pictures, because there are small differences. It's a little bit smaller than what you're used to, but please bring at least, I would say, 3 to 5 with you, because you will be needing them, especially if you're in uni and planning to register for school. You will be needing one, as well as to put on your residence permit. I'm going to say it again, you will be needing more than one. So bring a couple with you if you're able to do so. And my fourth tip is to bring a universal adapter with you if you have one. Like most of us, if you're living in the US, or if you're living in the Caribbean, or let me be specific, if you're living in Jamaica, because I'm from Jamaica, so let me speak about Jamaica. You're used to plugs much like this one with the, I don't know, it's a bit more rectangular, it's double, and we also have the triple one where it's 2 of these and then a circular one. So that's what we're used to, or those are the outlets that we're used to rather. But here in Germany, things are a bit different. This is just my charger, just to show you an example of what it looks like. The outlet is going to be circular, so it's just 2 circular ends. So chances are, if you have no idea whatsoever and you come here, then all your appliances and stuff, your phone, your laptop, whatever it may be, they will need to be charged, because you will be traveling for quite some time. You'll be exhausted. So if you have at least one universal adapter, then you don't have to worry about rushing out to find a grocery or a supermarket or wherever, because that will come in handy for sure. It will probably most likely come in handy before you even get to your residence. Like on the way during the journey, you might stop in a train station or an airport and need to plug in. So that's definitely something I would try to get my hands on before coming. If you can't find this in your local country, I would say go ahead on Amazon or one of these, big websites, eBay, whatever, and order one. They're relatively cheap. They're not expensive at all. And I'll put a link to that in the description, just in case you have no idea what I'm talking about. My 7th tip is another obvious one, is to make sure you bring all your documents with you. I know this sounds redundant, or like, girl, duh, why would I not bring my documents with me? But I'm just reiterating, because you'll be surprised how many people forget important documents. Obviously, if you're coming here to stay for a long time and you're far away from home, it's not as though you can just fly back home and get your documents, and it's important to have the original documents. So I'm just gonna say, make sure you have them, and I have a list here with me of just a few in terms of the general things I think you might need. Of course, you yourself will have to make sure that there aren't extra things based on what you're doing or where you have applied for. But for the general documents, I'm going to just read here: insurance information, so copies of your travel insurance, logs and stuff like that. Any other means of identification. Of course, you should have your passport, because if you're traveling, you will need your passport, so you should have your passport, but you can bring another means of identification just in case. Any sort of document that clearly can be identified as you, or used to identify you. Third, you can bring your transcripts and your certificates. These are things that you would need when registering for school. Of course, they should have copies of this, but just in case, you want to make sure that you have these as a backup, as well as any medical documents. If you're someone who has ailments or anything that needs to be proven, just out of surety, just make sure you have these things. And that's just off the top of my head. Those are the things that I definitely think double check and make sure you have them with you. It's better to have them and not to need them than to need them and not have them at all. So my eighth tip is directly for those who would have been looking for accommodation and have made the decision that perhaps student accommodation or uni accommodation is not for them. I would suggest going on to some popular accommodation websites here in Germany, one of which is WG. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen, either here or here, because of course I do not want to butcher the name of it, as well as I'm going to go ahead and try and pronounce it. One Gemeinschaft. So I'm just going to put that here. So those are just two of the more popular flat shares here in Germany. They'll give you a great experience in terms of meeting other people. If you also want to improve on the language, it's a good way because you'll be mixing with not just international students, but German students as well. And because this is a widely known website, more than likely or more often than not, the homes will be, reputable and from certified sellers or buyers. It's just much safer because these are known sites. And of course, I'll put a link in the description of the website just in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's just wg.de, I believe, but I'll just find the actual website and drop the link in the description so that way you don't have to go ahead and look for it. And finally, I would say try to know a bit of German. Of course, this is not required, especially if your course is completely in English. More than likely, you will be doing basic German in your university. I know I am. So it's not as though you need to be fluent in it, but I find that Germans are a little bit more open to international persons if you at least start the conversation with German. So even if you don't know any German, the fact that you made the effort to say something to them in German, it makes them a little bit more warm and more willing to listen to what you have to say, if that makes sense. So simple phrases like hello, Hallo, is hi here, guten Morgen, good morning, guten Abend, things like that, good evening, just simple phrases, basic phrases to just greet and start your sentences. Of course, this can be Googled or you can just look it up on YouTube. There are videos with pronunciations of these words because I know it might be a little bit weird at first, the pronunciations. I know they are for me or were definitely for me, but this will go a long, long way. And of course, like I said, just because you greet them in German doesn't mean that you need to continue a whole conversation in German. Just a simple greeting and then maybe perhaps learn how to ask if they speak a bit of English in German, and that will also be of use to you when following up with conversation. In Berlin, it's not difficult at all to find persons who are bilingual. You'll find a lot of persons speak both German and English, but in the smaller towns, cities, villages, like for example where I am, Dessau is not as big as Berlin, even though we're not very far from Berlin. So you'll find less people here speak English, as well as less people are bilingual. So it goes a long way to know a few German phrases and at least basic greetings in German. And finally, this is not so much a practical tip, but just a tip in general, is just say, I know I said finally already, but lastly, I'd just like to say this is more of a tip in general than a practical tip. It's just to keep an open mind. I know there are lots of stereotypes about Germans and Germany, that they're rude or mean or grumpy. I know I heard that stereotype before coming, and the fact of the matter is there are rude people everywhere, but I think it's a cultural difference with certain things. Like for example, Germans are very blunt. They aren't so good with small talk. That's not really a thing here. They just say directly what they have to do, or they say directly what they have to say and then they get going. So for persons who aren't used to that kind of culture, might find it a bit rude, but it's not at all. It's totally normal here. So just keep an open mind and be willing to learn about the culture and accept things as they come. And that's all I have for you today. So I do hope you found some of these tips practical as well as helpful. If you also have other things, maybe you're watching this from Europe or you've been to Germany and you can think of something else that would apply or would be helpful to someone else planning to move here permanently or for an extended period of time, go ahead and drop in the comment section some of your tips that you would like to share or think that we need to know. And please just engage with me in the comments, share, like, comment, subscribe. Until next week.